if Natasha could only get over her shyness, I think she'd be a great speaker. Anyways, okay, I think our panelists are ready to.
Just have my pen.
Oh yes, to discuss, answer your questions. To talk about, Raheel has mentioned she's eager to be asked what are some of the solutions to the problems, and as you know, we're accepting written questions. So, are you going? Are you? Oh, if you put up your hand with, and you will. Okay. The first question is, why does our small L liberal society allow religion to trump human rights? I taught in a public high school with 2 girls wearing burqas with eye slits. Should the Toronto District School Board ban burqas in class? Who wants to take that one?
Absolutely.
Here. Short and sweet.
Nothing else to say. Absolutely. Would they, as Natasha so clearly said, would they allow children there with ski masks? Would they allow people to come in wearing, what are they called, balaclavas over their face all the time? No. What we don't allow for anyone else, why should we allow for one particular community? The Canadian government should ban burqas, and then the Toronto District School Board won't have to.
Just one little thing. I totally agree with Raheel. That's absolutely true. You know, again, you know, I'm not a Muslim, but I think I have studied the Quran more than I have studied the Bible. So my understanding of the Quran, I think, is much greater than my understanding of the Bible. And I have read the Quran very carefully, and of course the parts about women, because I'm very interested in it. And nowhere in the Quran does it say a woman has to cover her hair even, let alone her face. What is, and then, you know, they always say the hadith. And as Raheel said, the hadith was written 200 years after the Prophet died. So basically, it's fiction. Let's face it. It's fiction.
Okay. Next question. Are the laws that discriminate against women in Islam, Islamic countries, due to cultures without a philosophical tradition that can trace themselves back to Aristotle through Descartes, Voltaire, Rousseau, and the Enlightenment and individualism? If so, how can the Enlightenment be encouraged to spread in Islamic countries and society?
Sorry, what?
I think that the short form of this is that Judeo-Christian culture combined with Greek and Roman, and so there's a whole period of questioning, philosophical questioning and criticism, so that to criticize your own religion has long been a tradition. And then, of course, the Enlightenment in Western civilization happened a few hundred years ago, and because of that, we have a secular tradition and the strict separation of church and state. How is that going to come? I think the question is, how is that going to come?
Okay, go first. Go ahead. Okay. Well, you know, again, I'm not the Muslim here, but that's okay. I can still give you. Yeah, I have to apologize all the time. I'm the Christian, so forgive me. But that's my Canadian side speaking here. No, I believe that, you know, like any other religion, you know, ideas and religions and ways of seeing the world, they evolve. But they cannot evolve unless they are questioned and challenged. So, you know, yes, it is true that Muslims have to challenge each other and they have to question each other. But at the same time, I'm going to tell you that in my country, Iran, where I was born and I was raised, and, you know, I would have liked to stay there. I wouldn't have come to Canada if everything had gone just fine and if the Islamic Revolution had not happened. But for example, in Iran, if Iranians question the Sharia law that governs the country, they will be arrested, tortured, raped, and executed. So honestly, I dare not ask. I have a lot of friends in Iran still. We are in touch. In some ways, you know, sometimes through travelers that come and go, sometimes through email, sometimes through Facebook. Very carefully, we are in touch. And honestly, I do not dare tell them that, you know what, why don't you get on the streets and protest? Why they did. I got on the streets and I protested, and look at what happened. Literally, I spent the next 20 years trying to recover from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'm still fighting it. So I have taken it upon myself. Here in Canada, I have a voice, even though I'm not a Muslim. But I do have a voice, and I have been very careful in educating myself more and more with, you know, being familiar with Islamic texts and the Quran and all of that. So I use my voice to question these activities that are sold to the world in the name of a religion that has been hijacked. So it is very important that I use my voice as a Catholic, and it is very important for you, each one of you. You cannot expect Raheel and Natasha to do all the work. Each one of us is responsible to make sure that ideas are challenged. And you know, whether an idea is religious or not, it is an idea. And it needs to be challenged, because it is through challenges that we grow and become better. So if every Canadian shuts up and doesn't say a word of criticism against Islamism, then how do we expect it to get any better? It's just not gonna.
I'll add to that. What Marina essentially is saying, and I'll add to that, Natasha has also pointed out, I often tell the audience, that this is not to be ghettoized as a Muslim problem. Unless we address this, look upon it, and find solutions as Canadians. Because let me tell you, my friends, if a bomb goes off in Yorkville, it affects all of us together. And so this is something that we all need to be concerned about. And therefore, we have to deal with this as a Canadian problem. In terms of the education and the questioning was officially barred and stopped in Islam in the 17th century. There were when the rise of the Wahhabi Salafi ideology took place, which is this ideology that we are speaking about, they said, no questioning. This is what is written. This is what is the dogma. This is what you have to accept. And otherwise, you're not a Muslim. So it's not only non-Muslims that they target. They also target Muslims who don't agree with them. They also target Muslims who follow a different path. So, for example, the largest Sunni majority of the Wahhabi Salafi thinking think Shias, Ismailis, Sufis, all of them are going to burn in hell, and they're going to help get them there faster. And so this is what they've set out to do. So the solutions are going to come from two. Solutions have to come from within the Muslim community. Our scholars have to stop looking at human rights through the lens of scripture. They need to perhaps start looking at human rights through the lens of humanity. And that is where they have to start rewriting. They have to look at the secondary literature, the hadith literature. And I'm happy to inform you that at some levels this is happening. You know, the first woman has translated the Quran, and she is of Iranian origin, and it's a very different translation. And they're looking at hadith literature and throwing out the material that is used as fodder for people who are not educated. So it has to come from education, enlightenment, social empowerment, and most of all from the women themselves, who are going to stand up and say, no, I am a Muslim because I want to be a Muslim, not because you're telling me to be a Muslim. And that is where the change is going to come from.
I do need to jump in on that one, please. Because the issue was this issue of enlightenment and change in the culture. Islam has not had a linear path. You know, you mentioned quite well that what we're dealing with today is a Wahhabist Islam, a very Arab-specific, Saudi-specific Wahhabi Islam. But the Islam of India during the Mughal Empire was not this Islam. This was an enlightened Islam. The Islam of Spain was an enlightened Islam. The Islam of Indonesia, up until fairly recently, has been enlightened. So we're not talking about that Islam has never gone through this. We've gone through this, but the people who have control over our narrative right now, over our religion right now, don't want enlightenment. And the other thing is looking towards the future. Look what's happening in the Middle East. Egypt is about to give everything to the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a very dangerous thing. And when those young people in Tahrir Square were demonstrating, there were so many cynics out there saying, nothing's going to come of it, nothing's going to come of it. And while a part of me believed that, a part of me thought, yeah, the Muslim Brotherhood's going to take control, I wanted to believe that a secular democracy is now going to flourish, where your vote means something. But unfortunately, who's talking about Egypt anymore? We're all too busy with Libya. We're not thinking about what the hell's going to happen in Egypt come September when the Muslim Brotherhood, divided up into 10 different parties, but all basically from the one motherboard, is going to take over everything in Egypt. That is a major problem. But no one wants to talk about that, and that needs to be addressed now. And guess what? Western allies also need to say, something needs to happen here. We need to have free and fair elections, but the problem is the Islamists are smart, and they're organized, and the Muslim Brotherhood was not part of those demonstrations. They were smart. They waited in the wings. They waited for the collapse, and now they're all going to step forward. It's like the communists of Europe. You know, you can have the Leather Smiths Association, the Blacksmiths Association, the Smith of the Black and the Black of the Smith, and the cotton workers, but they're all basically part of the Communist Party. That's what's going to happen with the Muslim Brotherhood. They're going to call each other 10 different names, and an Islamist agenda is going to move forward.
Okay, I'm going to jump in because, you know, it's good news and bad news. We have a lot of questions and not a lot of time. And so I'm going to ask you, although your answers are, we want to hear your full-throated responses, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put two questions together because they're related. This is one, this says specifically for Raheel, but I think it could be anybody could jump in. The first part of it is it not true that the Quran refers to Jews as pigs and apes? And the related question is, do you agree there are references in the Quran that contribute to Islamism and the inequality of women, for example, the half value of a woman's testimony or the marriage of the Prophet to a 9-year-old, Okay.
I'll very quickly try and answer this, although I could spend the whole night here. But I actually went looking for this reference in the Quran because it comes up so often, this idea that Jews are called apes and pigs. It's actually not there. It does not say that Jews are apes and pigs. There is a reference in the Quran which is very obtuse and which actually says that the people who will not believe, they will be turned into animals like pigs and apes. It does not very, very clearly mention the Jews. This is what I actually looked for it because I thought maybe...
Isn't it in the Hadith? Isn't it in the Hadith, specifically Jews, pigs and apes?
So what happens is that if there is an obtuse reference in the Quran, and this is how the Islamists work, they look at it, they look at what is a metaphor, they look at something out of context, they take one line, and I'm sure that those of you who read scripture know that if you take one line out of context, out of historical context, it can mean something entirely different. And that's what they do. They take it and then they twist it to their own interest. For example, the Salafi translation of the Quran, even in the opening, the Fatiha, where it doesn't say anything about Jews and Christians, the last line is, for those, keep me on the straight path, the path of those who are blessed and not the path who have gone astray. They've added an asterisk like the Jews and Christians. So when you have a multi-billion-dollar enterprise to produce Qurans, that is to their benefit, where they're writing all of this, and they're selling them, and they're giving them away free at Dundas Square, then of course we're up against a huge challenge. It does not say that. In terms of Muhammad marrying a 9-year-old, it was never validated or verified that she was 9 years old. The age was given between 12 or 15, and let me tell you that at those times, my grandmother was married off when she was 12. I mean, in those times, there were marriages of young girls. So if the intention is to say that he was in any way, as for us, a pedophile, which is something that has been going on, then I think that it is very ignorant of the person who's asked the question. They need to go back, read Deepak Chopra's History of Muhammad. There has to be better knowledge, and it doesn't help by bringing up polemics such as this because, we're in this fight together. And the question is that those parts of the Quran that speak about the Jews and Christians was for a certain time, about the Jews. It says, do not take them as your trusted friends. It was for a certain time and place. What we are saying, those of us who are moderate, liberal, progressive Muslims, we are saying that we have to look at the Quran, put aside those issues like armed jihad, which is no longer valid. And I thank Tariq Fatah for this, because he brought up this issue, that armed jihad was valid at that time because it was armed warfare for protection. It's no longer valid, so we need to put that aside and go on with those parts which are 90%, which are compassionate, merciful, and speak about daily life and ethics and morals.
Okay. Okay. Here's a question. It's addressed to Natasha, but I'm...